Welcome to the Mind Solution podcast with Sarah Maud. The Mind Solution podcast is for leaders like you who are passionate about well-being in the workplace because you understand that a strong, resilient and happy workforce is the key to your organisation's success. The Mind Solution podcast is here to help you. So join us every week where we'll share with you powerful insights, strategies and know-how to ensure that your people and your organisation are truly thriving from the inside out. Hello, Sarah Maud here and welcome. And I'm here today to share with you something which I heard this weekend which really landed with me in a way that it hadn't landed before. What I heard was somebody saying to me, more of the same gets more of the same. And I'm going to say that again so that you can really hear this. More of the same gets more of the same. And when I heard that this weekend, it took me back to my time when I was an HR business partner for Brighton and Sussex University Hospital. And I was an HR business partner to a division of 2,000 people. And every single month, I would rock up to what I would call the X Factor. Now, I'm sure that you've heard of the X Factor, even if you haven't seen the X Factor. But instead of facing Simon Cowell, I had to face the Director of Strategy. Very scary woman to me. Loved her outside of work. In my panel, found her very scary. I also had to face the Deputy HR Director, aka Amanda Holden. I had to face Louis Walsh in the form of the Deputy Finance Director. I had to face the Deputy Chief Executive and a non-executive director. So every single month I would have to attend this strategy review meeting. And I would have to talk to them about what was happening in my division and what were we doing to achieve our HR metrics, our key performance indicators. So what were we doing to reduce absence? What were we doing to reduce the number of long-term sick cases? What were we doing to reduce the number of days that people were absent from the organisation? What were we doing to improve retention? All of these key performance indicators. And every single month, I had nothing that I could tell them. Now, there was the odd month where I'd maybe get excited because we'd saved £117. But the reality was, I wasn't making a difference. And I would come away from those meetings every month feeling like I was failing. Feeling like I was failing as an HR business partner because I wasn't creating the kind of impact that I wanted to and that I knew that the strategy board wanted to hear. Now, in my division was made up of different departments. So we had the maternity department, we had intensive care, we had the cancer unit, we had this incredible collection of people that were doing amazing work every day. Every day they were showing up, they were working incredibly long hours. And if you've ever read the book This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay, it gives you a real insight into what life is like within the NHS. And these people were doing extraordinary things in life or death situations. It was very different to the corporate environment where it might feel life or death if you have to do a presentation and you're terrified of public speaking. But these people were showing up every day, making a difference to people's lives in very high pressure life or death situations. And so was that naturally going to create issues? Was it going to create pressure? Were people going to go off sick? Yes. Were people's mental health and well-being affected? Yes. But I knew that I just didn't have anything that I could really do that would make a difference. Because all that I was doing was running around putting out fires. I would have made a great firewoman because that was my reality. And within the resources that we had and the time that I had to do anything proactive, which was virtually zero, then I would run absence management training for the managers, for the supervisors, for the team leaders. I would run some change management training. I'd work with the department heads to look at what can we do to create more harmony, to create centres of excellence where people really worked together. They supported one another. What could we really do to improve health and well-being? Which, given that we were in a hospital, irony was not lost on me. But I had nothing to offer them because we didn't have anything in place. And I knew that we were missing a trick. I just didn't know what that trick was. I knew that it wasn't enough to just refer people to occupational health. I knew that it wasn't enough to do return to work interviews. I knew that managers were so stretched that they were under so much pressure. But I had nothing to give by way of a solution. And I'll be honest, it was incredibly demotivating. And my boss, my HR director, when I first started at the hospital, she called me the yellow hat person. Now, if you've read Edward de Bono's 6 Thinking Hats, fantastic book, by the way, I was the yellow hat person. I was the optimistic, ideas generating, positive, hopeful, really annoying person if you're a black hat person, but I was that person. I came into the NHS. I'd never worked for the NHS or public sector before. My background was purely private. I came in there and it was like, wow, okay, this is a very different type of environment. And so as an HR business partner, I was trying to do what I could, but we were so limited on what we could offer by way of solutions. And so over time, my big, bright, vibrant yellow hat was starting to lose its colour. My light was starting to diminish. And so eventually I made the decision to leave the organisation, to leave the NHS and to go back to the private sector. But I knew, even though I was going back to the private sector, I took up a role with British Airways as the head of HR for British Airways Holidays, which certainly wasn't life or death. That was about joy. It was about excitement. It was about adventure. Even though it was a very different working environment and we could do more, we had more resources, we had more money, we could be more creative. We weren't unionised, so there was a different way of working, a different HR landscape. The results that I was getting were still, we were getting results, but we were still getting incremental results. And so I knew intuitively that there was a different way, a better way of doing things. And at the time, I had the opportunity to start studying solution-focused psychotherapy and hypnotherapy, not because I wanted to become a solution-focused psychotherapist or hypnotherapist, but I thought maybe this is an opportunity for me to learn about what makes people tick, to really get inside the mind of people and understand from the inside out why we behave the way that we behave. Because I knew an awful lot about policy, process, employment law, but in terms of psychology, I didn't know a huge amount about that. But again, instinctively, I knew that this was something that could potentially really add value. So I started to study my diploma, and I probably not even got a third of the way into my training when I had one of the biggest aha moments in my career. I mean, to say that my light bulb went on, it was like Blackpool illuminations in my mind, because I realised that this was the missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle. And on my diploma, we'd just been covering the stress response. So I'd spent a whole weekend immersed in understanding the stress response. And I'd heard the word stress. Of course I'd heard the word stress. I'd worked in HR for about 10 years and actually was under the illusion that stress wasn't a bad thing. So when I started to understand what the stress response was, what the survival response was, at a real primal level, it blew my mind. Because I realised that in the stress response, we can't think straight. We can't make great decisions. I realised that in the stress response, the only things that we are concerned with are time, our environment, and what's happening within our body. I learned that in the stress response, we don't have access to the executive functions of the brain which are needed for high performance. We can't think creatively. We can't be innovative because all that we are concerned with is survival. It's that freeze, fight and flight response. And what I also realised is that unless you really understood this, unless you got this, the chances are that you were walking around in the stress response and you didn't even know it. So I'd spent most of my career in HR trying to reduce absence, improve performance, get people to a consistent level of high performance. But guess what? They were all walking around in the stress response. They were all being followed around by saber-toothed tigers. And it was like, wow, this was what we needed to educate people on. This and far more, but that was my first real big light bulb moment. And I will tell you, I was so excited when I had this light bulb moment because I could see an opportunity for us to get results. I could see an opportunity for us to do something different that would not only benefit people, but would benefit the organisation, that would make that tangible difference to the bottom line. But I knew that we had to educate people about the way that their mind worked. We had to educate them about the body, learning to listen to the body, what the body was telling them. You know, my mind was blown in understanding that 99% of physical health conditions start with a stress response. So even all of those cases that I'd experienced in HR of migraines, not myself, but people in the organisation that had migraines, problems with their stomach, problems with their gut, acid reflux, bad backs, all of that was also coming from the stress response. But people didn't necessarily know that. And that the longer they were spending in the stress response, it became the norm. instead of the exception. And so at that moment, I made a decision. And that decision was to take this knowledge back into organisations, back into the public sector, back into the private sector. I felt, for want of a better description, I felt it was my calling. And so I left my HR career when I qualified as a psychotherapist and started to work one-to-one with people and started to put all of this training that I've gained into action. And the results that I got were phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, by educating people on this and utilising tools like the power of hypnotherapy, like the power of emotional freedom technique, and using this one-to-one with people and just creating the most phenomenal shifts with them. And I always kept in touch with my old HR director at the hospital. And whenever I met up with her, I would talk about this stuff. And my passion for this was just, it was infectious. But what I loved about my boss is she got it. She really, really got it. And she was like, you are so right, Sarah. We've got to do something different. This is the missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle. So she invited me to come back into the hospital and actually deliver training to the HR and people and development team about what I'd learnt. So I put together a one-day workshop to take my old colleagues through these key insights, to teach them about well-being, to teach them about what we actually mean by resilience, to teach them about the stress response, to teach them about actually how do we stop ourselves getting emotionally hijacked, so that they had that deeper understanding of what was needed to make a difference in the wider organisation within the hospital. And it was amazing to go back in and to see my old colleagues and to witness them experience their own light bulb moments, to really join the dots. But I felt really proud to tell them that they're not failing as HR professionals. It's just that they were like dogs running around chasing their tail because of the situation, because more of the same was just getting more of the same. And I love the fact that my old HR director had that insight and that she was courageous enough to start running this kind of training, that she made the link between what was needed in the mind and body and what we needed to give people. And I know it sounds a bit bonkers because I'm talking about a hospital here, but often we can't see the wood for the trees. You know, surgeons and doctors and nurses, they might understand the stress response. They might have a far greater understanding of the physiology of the body, but put it into the context of what's happening within yourself. You don't always make the links. You don't always see what's in front of you, just in the same way that I hadn't seen the fact that more of the same gets more of the same. And so I know that that day, standing in front of my old HR colleagues, was the start of Brighton and Sussex University Hospital starting to do things differently, starting to recognise that if they really wanted the results that they wanted, they were going to have to make some big, bold moves. They were going to have to really invest in well-being in the workplace. And they knew that they would get the results that they were looking for. And so that was the first seed that got planted. And I am so grateful that I was part of that first seed, that we've gone to grow on and create trees, create a whole forest of change as far as the hospital's concerned. so that we could be part of their journey and helping to transform the health and the happiness of people that do extraordinary work every single day. Now, I'd love to know how this is landing with you, and put it in the comments box. Send us your thoughts, because if you're sat there and you're thinking, yeah, do you know what? This is landing with me, Sarah. Because even now, I'm talking about 10 years ago. And yes, well-being in the workplace is now in the spotlight in a way that it's never been in the spotlight. But despite this, I still see organisations doing what they've always done. And because they're doing what they've always done, guess what? They're getting more of the same. And I have conversations on an almost daily basis. And I say, what is it that you're doing in your organisation that's proactively making a difference when it comes to health, when it comes to well-being? And they might say, well, we've got an employee assistance program. I'm like, yay! You've had an employee assistance program for 20 years. What is that actually delivering? What impact is that having? I'll be really honest with you. Ever since I started working in HR, which was about 12 years ago, every organisation I worked in had an EAP scheme. I have never worked in an organisation where I saw that making a difference. A real, tangible impact. Some organisations say, well, we've got private health cover so that people can get access to, say, counselling or CBT if they need it. And my response is, but what's that doing to proactively stop people from needing private health cover in the first place, from needing to reach out to these services? What are you doing to stop people spiralling down rabbit holes? And actually, have you looked at the cost of your private health cover? And often when they do, they see that the cost of their private health cover and claims has gone through the roof. And we know over the last 2 years, it has gone through the roof because people have been falling apart. People have been falling apart. They've been in situations they've never been in. They've had to adapt. And yes, we're very adaptable as a human race, but they have been in such a unique situation that I don't know anybody that's not been affected in some way, shape or form over the last 2 years. But organisations across the globe didn't have proactive well-being strategies in place, so that when the pandemic hit, the cracks appeared, and they appeared very, very quickly. So my invitation to you is to take a step back. Whether you are the chief exec, whether you are the HR director, or whether you are the entrepreneur of your business. You might run a small to medium-sized business. And as the founder, taking that step back and looking at where are you doing more of the same that is just getting more of the same. And when you identify that, to ask yourself, what needs to happen here? What's going to make the biggest impact on your organisation, on your people? What are the results that more of the same have just been giving you? You know, if you are part of an organisation that's got high levels of absence, that's got high levels of turnover, then more of the same is not going to give you what you're looking for. So where do you need to make big, bold moves as far as well-being is concerned? Now, before you start running off and going, right, well, we'll run a webinar. We'll run a webinar on the neuroscience of stress. Let's just take a big step back. And whilst I really want to challenge you to do things differently, one of the things that I did absolutely respect from the director of strategy at BSUH is that we need to be strategic. We do need to be strategic about what we are investing in. You know, organisations, they've got budgets, and yes, you can build a business case, but you have got budgets. And you want to make sure that what you're investing in is going to have the right impact. So taking that step back and really asking those questions, asking yourself, whatever it is that you decide to do at a big level that's going to create the biggest impact, how is that feeding in to your organisation's goals, to your vision, to your values? Now, you might be getting really excited in the same way that I was really excited when I saw this light bulb go on in my own mind. And you might be thinking, yes, Sarah, you're absolutely right. We need to start doing things differently. So if this is really resonating with you, then do get in touch with us at www.themindsolution.com. We'd love to hear from you, or drop us an email at info@themindsolution.com. And we look forward to hearing from you very soon. Leave your reviews, leave your comments in the comment box. I'd love to know how this has landed for you. And until we meet again, have a wonderful day.